If you find yourself not benefiting from reminders or not taking people's advice, and it's hard for you to differentiate between good and evil, or halal and haram. Also, you don't have any khushu' in your salah if you're praying your salahs. You don't cry when you listen to the Quran. You find it very hard to wake up or to pray the salahs. So this is a sign that you might have a hard heart, or your heart has become hardened. And this is mentioned in the Quran. The hard heart could be one of the most deadliest situations that you could be in, that you won't even realize that. It could be one of the worst punishments that you could get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's mentioned in the Quran. The Quran tells us the causes of having hard heart, and also how to avoid it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَمَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ ولا يكونوا كالذين أوتوا الكتاب من قبل فطال عليهم الأمد فقست قلوبهم وكثير منهم فاسقون. Allah said, has not the time come yet for the believers, for their hearts to be humbled at the remembrance of Allah and also what's been revealed to them? And they shouldn't be like the Christians and the Jews who received the scriptures, but then they were spoiled by this long time. They eventually became spoiled until their hearts became hard, and Allah said that most of them are still rebellious or committing sins. So some of the causes of having a hard heart is mentioned in the Quran, and I will try to mention as many as I can, inshallah. So one of the causes of having a hard heart is to turn away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to turn away from the remembrance of Allah. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. Allah said, as the one who turns away from my reminder, my remembrance, he will live a miserable life, and he will be raised up on the day of judgment blind. So that is the punishment of the one who turns away from Allah, that he will live a miserable life, and on the day of judgment he will become blind. The second one, also there's a hadith which says that the parable or the example of the one who remembers Allah and the one who doesn't remember Allah is like the living and the dead. So the person who's turning away from Allah's remembrance is like someone who is dead. Another reason people have a hard heart is because they neglect their duties, like their salahs and the pillars of Islam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَبِمَا نَقْضِهِمْ مِيثَاقَهُمْ لَعَنَّاهُمْ وَجَعَلْنَا قُلُوبَهُمْ قَاسِيَةً. But for breaking their covenant, we condemned them and hardened their hearts. So this was happening to the people before, the people of the scriptures, and also it's happening to our ummah. And if a person neglects any of the duties, then he will get a hard heart. Another reason why a person has a hard heart is if he consumes haram. And there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ talks about a person who raises his hand saying, Ya Rab, Ya Rab, he's calling out to Allah, and he did everything to deserve his dua to be accepted, but it's just that his food was haram, and his drink was haram, his clothing was haram, he was nourished with haram. So how is Allah going to respond to his dua? Is because by consuming haram, he has hard heart, and Allah is not going to accept his dua. Another reason why people have a hard heart is because they indulge in sins. So every time you commit a sin, a black dot appears on your heart. Every time you sin, a dot appears, and if the person repents, then it will be polished and removed. But if he continues sinning, then it will completely become black, until he won't be able to tell the falsehood from the truth. كَلَّا بَلْ رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. Allah said, Surah Al-Mutaffifin, that above their hearts is a ceiling due to the sins that they used to commit or what they did. Another reason for a hard heart is when somebody sins openly, and Allah will forgive everybody except the people who commit sins openly or talk about their sins openly after Allah has covered them up. For example, if they committed a sin at night and Allah has screened them from the people, and then they boast about it, or they tell people the next day. Also, another reason of a hard heart is when a person is happy with ignorance, like he doesn't want to learn about his religion. That is a big cause of a hard heart. Another reason of a hard heart is to be, deceived by the world and to be indulged in the pleasures. Al-Fudayl, rahimahullah, said, ثلاث خصال تقسي القلب. He said three traits cause the harden of the heart. A lot of eating, a lot of sleeping, a lot of talking. كثرة الأكل وكثرة النوم وكثرة الكلام. So these three, they harden the heart. Excessive laughing and preoccupation with amusement. So a person who's always laughing, then his heart will die. The Prophet ﷺ said, لا تكثر الضحك فإن كثرة الضحك تميت القلب. Don't laugh a lot, because laughing a lot deadens the heart, or it causes the heart to die. Another cause of a hardened heart is to be lazy. And the Prophet ﷺ, laziness and apathy, and the Prophet ﷺ used to seek refuge from Allah from laziness. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-'ajzi wal-kasal. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from incapacity and laziness. Another one is the intolerance of opinion and a lot of controversy. People who can't accept other opinions, like when people give them an opinion which is based on the Quran Sunnah, they just argue and argue. They don't accept it. Also, people who have too much pride and kibr, and they have contentment for others. They look down on other people. So what can prevent the hard heart, which is the opposite, like persistence in the remembrance of Allah, always remembering Allah, making dua to Allah, looking after your duties, maintaining the duties like your salah, seeking halal income, fulfilling the trusts, increasing your voluntary ibadah, generosity and kindness to the creation, remembering death and visiting the graves, coming to the gatherings of dhikr and halaqat and knowledge, repenting to Allah a lot, saying astaghfirullah, especially when you commit a sin, looking at the lives of the scholars and the companions and the righteous people, mysticism in this world, contemplation, like thinking about how short this world is, and having zuhud and seeing that it's, the changing conditions of this world and how it's not really worth it, visiting the sick people, people with afflictions, watching people die, or maybe you might have relatives that you see that have died. This, brings the heart back to life. Teaching, reading, learning about the Quran, reading the Quran with contemplation and understanding it and being affected. So why is a hard heart so deadly? Because many people don't even know that they have a hard heart, and it's like walking with. Al-Muhasibi said, rahimahullah, اعلم أن الذنوب تورث الغفلة والغفلة تورث القسوة والقسوة تورث البعد من الله والبعد من الله يورث النار وإنما يتفكر في هذا الأحياء وأما الأموات فقد أماتوا أنفسهم بحب الدنيا. So he said, know that the sin begets heedlessness. The person would not know, he will be heedless, ghafla. And ghafla and heedlessness begets the hardening of the heart. It causes the hardening of the heart. And the hardness of the heart causes the person to be distant from Allah. And the distance of Allah causes the person to go into hellfire. And he said, only those who reflect on this are the living. As for the dead, they have killed themselves with the love of this world. So it's only the person who is alive, has some iman in him, that will be able to kind of feel that he's not how he was before and he needs to change his ways. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save us from qaswatul qalb, our hearts humble, and to allow us to go back to him with a sound heart.